Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Naily by Nature. I'm your host, Naily. On this channel, we talk about spirituality, we talk about social issues, self-actualization, law of attraction, self-improvement, and so much more. I also just started my new series where I go around to different cities asking people what they're wearing and what they value. So if you're interested in any of that, please remember to hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoy this video, please remember to thumbs up this video. So let's get into what this video is all about. Today's episode, I wanted to discuss a question that I have been pondering for a while. And that question is, has the world been indoctrinated into white supremacy? I wanted to make this video for a while, but I wanted to really collect my thoughts before I made this video. But I think it's really important to have this conversation because there is white nationalism rising all over the world right now. In America, in Poland, in Italy, in Germany, in France. And there's a reason for that, right? And I think it's really important that we as a human race, as a collective, really understand and discuss what the teaching of white supremacy really is. Because I think that we've been taught that it's just that white people believe that they are superior and that they have authority. But at the same time, there are a lot of poor white people all around the world, right? And it could be either that they just don't know how to use their privilege, or that for white supremacy to work, you need poor white people. You need poor white people to be soldiers, to keep white supremacy alive. That's what it seems like to me. I thought about the indoctrination of white supremacy for a long time. I remember in the second grade raising my hand and asking my teacher at the time why all the US presidents were white. And I think as a child, that was the first time I kind of acknowledged and noticed that, like, even though I was in a school where there was so much diversity, the people who were in positions of power were mostly white. So I really started to question that. If you exclusively look at America and all of our industries, whether it be fashion, sports, technology, most of the people who are leading and controlling those industries are white people. Whether it's Anna Wintour and all these French fashion houses that control and make decisions for the fashion industry, whether we're looking at sports, and despite the fact that most of the athletes that play for the NFL or the NBA are black, the people who run those organizations are mostly white. So my question is, are white people innately superior, or have we all just been indoctrinated to believe so, including white people? When I take a closer look at the world, I can't help but to notice that anti-blackness lives in almost every community of color. The closer your skin is to whiteness, the closer your features are to whiteness, the more superior you are in that ethnic group. White passing Latinos feel like they are superior to Afro-Latinos. Arabs believe that they are more superior than Indian, Bengali, Pakistani people because they are mostly fair and white. Indian, Bengali, and Pakistani people believe that they are superior to Guyanese and Trinidadian people. Guyanese and Trinidadian people believe that they are superior than black people. Anti-blackness literally lives in all communities of color. Even though some Asian countries have never been colonized by European countries, they still do value white beauty standards. Whiteness is considered to be the beauty standards in Asia, and they are definitely very anti-black. the belief that white people are superior and everything outside of that is inferior is an ideology that has been taught to us and has been taught to really the world. There's a saying in India, if you see two fishes fighting in the water, you can be sure that an Englishman passed by 5 minutes ago. White supremacists didn't just teach that they were superior. They also went into countries and divided tribes. And this essentially fucked up people. And this led to civil wars and genocides much after Europeans had left those countries. When Europeans finally left countries that they colonized, they left certain groups of people in charge. And most of those groups of people that they left in charge resembled more of the European features. So they were a bit more fair-skinned. They had more European-like features. And what this did was it created these huge divisions among these countries. And that created civil war and genocide. We know that that happened in Rwanda when the French created two groups of people, Hutus and Tutsis. And when the Europeans left, they left a certain group of people in charge, and that ended up creating a genocide in that country. Because one group of people believed that they were superior, or because one group of people had more authority than the other group of people. That's psychologically damaging people. And today we have Israel and Palestine, and much of that war should be put on the British and the US for providing the arms, and the British for providing a land that wasn't theirs to give away. India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh were never meant to be divided, but the British came and they divided us. And that's the goal of white supremacy. It's to keep people polarized so that we never unite and actually break down this structure. Is to keep Israelis and Palestinians fighting so that they never realize what's really going on. White supremacy is all over the Israeli and Palestinian war. So I really wanted to make this video after I saw Joe Rogan's video about his fear that woke culture was going to prevent white men from going outside, and that white men would be silenced because of woke culture. So I thought his comments were really interesting, and I wanted to make a video about it, but I decided to wrap this all in with it because I think it makes sense. But let me first just say that I'm not a fan of cancel culture because I don't think it's effective at all. I think that people who have been canceled in the past have actually came back 10 times harder. So it never really does anything to someone's brand unless you're like Jeffrey Epstein or Harvey Weinstein. Then in that case, you deserve to be canceled, and those people are canceled for good. However, influencers or actors or actresses or any celebrity who gets canceled, I mean, you usually see them make it out and they're doing even better than before. However, I do think that woke culture has its benefits because it's an opportunity for people of color and people from different demographics to kind of voice their concern and call out the injustice that they experience. Although at the same time, I do think that woke culture can have its extreme where we can end up pushing people away instead of bringing them to the table to kind of discuss their differences of opinions and to kind of understand others. But if we just cancel people and, you know, push them away, we don't really ever get to a conclusion that would be for the greater good of everyone. There are people who comment on my videos all the time who are like upset at me and like go off on me. And although I don't agree with that or agree with the way they come at me, I do take the time to actually read their comments and understand where they're coming from. Nothing's black and white to me. So anyways, when I saw Joe Rogan's video, I was a little annoyed, a little frustrated, and I thought it was a bit humorous because Joe Rogan is creating fear around a hypothetical problem because white men are not being silenced. White men have the most freedom out of any group of people in the world. If you turn on any cable news network right now, there is a white man talking about whatever he wants to talk about, whether it's CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, ABC. I mean, white men are really just all over it, talking about how they feel. White men not being able to talk about how they feel, it's not a real problem. And so I was looking at the comment section of his video, and it was like all these white men who were just like, yeah, you're so right, Joe Rogan. He was just like literally put the battery in their back, and they were just like, yes, you're so right. That's what's happening to us. We are under attack. And I just thought it was really hilarious, because this isn't a real problem. You're literally afraid of the fact that people of color and marginalized communities are talking about the injustice that they experience, and because we are leveling the playing field, it's making you feel like your existence is under attack. White men have been indoctrinated into white supremacy, and they've been taught that they are innately superior. So when people of color and other marginalized groups of people call out the injustice and we begin to level the playing field, we are becoming equal. And that's the real threat. And it's not just that people of color and marginalized groups of people are able to call out the injustice, it's what's happening after we call out the injustice, right? So, for example, if we call out the injustice that is happening to people of color in the workplace, and we say, companies are not paying people of color and our white counterparts the same. So now companies are acknowledging this problem, and they're making sure that people of color and white people are being paid the same, that men and women are being paid the same. When we call out the injustice that, there's not enough people of color in leadership roles. So now companies are like, okay, let's have more people of color in leadership roles. Let's be active in doing that. And so what this is doing is it's making white men feel like they are losing control. And this is the threat. This is why they're feeling like they're going to lose their voice. They're going to be silenced. They're not going to be able to go outside. And it's crazy because people of color right now in 2021 are still in survival mode. And you're afraid that you're not going to be able to talk about how you feel. And it's not even a real problem. Like, there are people in Palestine who are in survival mode. There are people in Syria in survival mode. There are people in Africa in survival mode. There are people in Latin America in survival mode. And the biggest fear that white men have is a hypothetical one. It's not even real. And so if you look at the problems of people of color and the problems of white men, there's a huge gap. There's a huge disconnect, because people of color are having real life issues. Like, they're having real problems. They're just trying to live. Whereas white men feel like they're just trying to hold on to the power that they believe is their right. That they have a right to being superior than other groups of people. That they have more authority than other groups of people, because that is the indoctrination of white supremacy. Because this is what white supremacy have taught them. Joe Rogan's comment led white men to feel like their existence is under attack. And when white men feel like their existence is under attack, especially in places like America, that's when you're going to see white nationalism rise. The fact that Joe Rogan is afraid of a hypothetical problem, despite the fact that white men have historically been extremely violent in this country towards people of color, is senseless. It's irresponsible. And Joe Rogan should actually take a step back to understand the gravitas of his comment, because white supremacy and white nationalism is really not something to play around with. To understand the teachings of white supremacy, we have to be able to understand the origin of this ideology. And the origin of this ideology began in 1478, when the Pope had approved the establishment of the Spanish Inquisition. The intent of the Spanish Inquisition was to investigate the cleanliness of the blood of Jewish and Muslim converts. Clean blood was considered Christian and European, and unclean blood was considered savage and non-Christian. This was the first time in the history of the world where the concept of race based on blood was used as law. White supremacy not only taught Europeans that they are superior, but it gave them the right to enslave and exterminate other groups of people. In 1492, there was a mass deportation of Jewish people from Spain, and then following that were a mass deportation of Muslims. One of the basic teachings of white supremacy is that one group of people have authority and are more superior than another group of people. And usually the people in power have access to guns and weapons. And this just reinforces the authority that they already have. We see that today in Israel and Palestine, where Israelis have access to, weapons of mass destruction, and they're able to walk around with weapons, whereas it's illegal for a Palestinian to own a gun. We see that in America with our police and Black Lives Matter. We see that with the Uyghur Muslims in China. We have seen this happen constantly to vulnerable groups of people throughout history, and it still happens today. The person holding the gun wins, and if there's one thing you need to know about America is that America loves gun. It's literally been the bedrock of our country. The first company George Washington approved of after America just got its independence was the Springfield Armory, which was a manufacturer for weapons. There was an entire genocide of indigenous people here in America, which this country does not acknowledge at all. We don't learn about it. We don't even call it a genocide. But how can we not call it a genocide when there were 60 million Native Americans on this land that were wiped out? This was no war. This was a genocide. One group of people had bow and arrows, and the other group of people had guns. It was not a fair fight. The Stanford experiment is a wonderful example of the teachings of white supremacy. In 1971, Professor Zimbardo had set out to investigate prison life. He planned a 2-week experiment in Stanford University, and there were volunteers who were either prisoners or prison guards. They had to end that experiment in 6 days because the guards became extremely sadistic and authoritarian. They were psychologically torturing the volunteer prisoners. This wasn't even real life. It was just an experiment, but the volunteer prison guards really embraced their roles. The Stanford experiment is basically how the world runs and how we as a group of people are policed. Our media constantly builds fear within us, and it's constantly teaching us that we should be afraid of each other. And because we need to be afraid of each other, we need to protect ourselves. Because we need to protect ourselves, we need to go out and get guns. The indoctrination of white supremacy is to keep us all polarized. That's how these authoritarian governments are able to control us. When you have a country where everyone is afraid of each other, when it's become tribal, when it's this is my people, that's your people, and that's their people, when you're able to give somebody a gun and tell them that the enemy is outside of them, people then are just afraid of each other. They don't ever take the time to sit down and listen to each other. And I think that as a group of people, as a human race, as a collective, we have to be able to confront this so that we can actually arrive at peace. Maybe instead of being afraid of losing your privilege, maybe take the time to understand each other, to understand others. White nationalism is rising all around the world. And at the same time, people of color are fighting for justice and equality. We, the people, need to recognize the agenda of white supremacy, which is to keep us all polarized so that we never unite and bring down this really fucked up system. This system that rewards small groups of multi-billionaires while oppressing so many vulnerable groups of people. The difference between rich white men and poor white men is that rich white men are benefiting from this indoctrination, and poor white men are the soldiers. They're literally the soldiers. They fight in our army, they're in our navy, they become our police officers, they become our correctional officers, because the indoctrination of white supremacy taught them that not only are they superior, but they have a right to this authority. And the indoctrination of white supremacy has been around for centuries now. And that has been passed down generations after generation after generation. And I think it really takes white men to actually come to the table to listen to other people of color and other marginalized groups of people and see that we are actually more similar than we are different, and that we're not trying to take away any of their rights, like taking away their voice, but that people of color and marginalized groups of people are fighting to be equal, and we're fighting to get out of survival mode. But I think it is important for us as a group of people, as a human race, to recognize that we are a human race and that everything else is tribal. Especially if we want peace, especially if we want to move things forward, especially if we want to live a better life, which I think that we all are deserving of. So I think like comments like Joe Rogan's, where he's just evoking fear and creating more division than we need, it's absolutely irresponsible. My intent for this video wasn't to like outcast any group of people, because I don't think that white people should be blamed. We've all been indoctrinated into white supremacy, and that's basically what I was trying to say. Anti-blackness lives in all of our communities, and that's something for people of color to also address within your own community. I know that there is a lot of racism that happens within our community, a lot of colorism that happens in all of our communities, and that's something for people of color to also address. I think it's time for working class people all over the world to finally realize that we are meant to be polarized so that we never unite and that we never bring down the system. But the system is so fucked and it's getting so bad, and there's a sense of urgency for us all to work together, to realize we have more in common than we have differences. When you connect with people, even people who are really different from you, you realize people are just trying to live. You know, when I travel to different countries, the poorest people are just trying to live and trying to live a happy life. They're not trying to take from anybody, especially poor people. They're not trying to take from you. They're just trying to survive. I think we as a human race can just be better to each other. I don't know what you guys think about this video. I would love to know. Please leave a comment below if you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up this video. Subscribe if you haven't already joined the gang. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you for watching this video. See you guys at my very next video. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.